change. That's, there we go. That's. And let's move this over here. Getting on. I think I'm getting on. Okay. Where's everybody else?
Starting spring break early, I suppose.
That might be it. I can't say that I plan. We'll see how it goes in terms of who shows up. And then what we'll do is, then I'll give you the brief legacy and I'll outline it so you can see it quite correctly. And so. All right. Right. I question whether this was Wednesday. That's how I'm saying, but it's good.
I was questioning what days it was when I was wondering the weather.
Mine always depends on whether or not I have my phone or calendar. Yeah, they changed this whole setup. Apparently, those in the back are mirrored and different than those up here. Next, I've got 6 minutes out. That, talk about deterrence. Working with is pretty quick. And then that'll actually set us up for some of these methods. I'll talk about in terms of analysis, and then I'll talk about in terms of affecting it. Got some sound going. Oh, cool. That, and I wanted to show you was because I had you guys, we had some in-class stuff where I was showing you how to manage some numbers. That's stuff that I'll show you how to use. See what it does. Send. Me. Yeah, that's actually better. Let's do that.
My third class opened yesterday.
Yeah.
3.
That's a lot of fast classes.
Well, I was supposed to take a class last summer,
Mhm.
but I had like the whole cancer scare and all that other stuff I had to focus on. So I didn't. I wish I would have.
Mhm. Yeah. Time is a very precious resource. It really is. And 12 hours this semester?
No, it's not.
Just okay,
Yeah.
good. Good. I was gonna say, that's, 9's a lot. Whenever I did my master's, I think I don't know if I did 9 hours actually while I was in the master's. I think most of them I capped it off at 6. Too much.
Mm-hmm.
It's like too many nights where it's 3 in the morning and I should be going to bed, and one side of me is crashing out, the other side of me is screaming at me to stay awake to try to finish something.
Mm-hmm.
That's not fun.
I was like, because I was thinking before I showed up in her class, I was like, oh, so many papers I already have. these two I'm focusing on, and thank God it's just like quizzes
Mhm.
and like a few discussion boards. I'm like, yes, no paper.
Yeah,
It's like I can't handle another one.
yeah. Well, the main thing about the ones in the class that have the semesters, I'm trying to get them where they feed into everything else. And that's the big thing it's a piece that I want people to be thinking about. It's,
Mhm.
you know, there's always some level of, I won't say discretion is not the right word, but in terms of flexibility in topics and how you use in the class, the more you try to keep at least some element of your papers across your classes in common, the easier it is to tie all of that stuff you're reading in together.
Mhm.
And that's something that sometimes the classes will do it directly and that makes it a little easier. Sometimes they won't do that. If you think about it and make that inference, it will make it easier for you, but they won't tell you that.
Mhm.
That's like, you know, like that. Getting it to where it works across those is the big thing. For this one, it's like I said, it's you gotta touch the theory. If you want methods, and so you can do that, you know, that kind of thing. Um, you'll also have the literature review side. So you get for capstone, as you know, the capstone has that section where it's 2 pages of theory.
Mhm.
You need your entry, you need that theory section. Then what you do is you just start cross-linking the two where it's okay. Literature review said this thing's a factor. Theory says it works this way. That means this will probably do this, you know, that kind of thing. And so the rest was pretty easy. You just use the logic side and you don't really have to delve back into the research unless you want to, you know, ideally, if you've got the time, you can go back through and find more research that actually supports what you're putting forward too. That's if you have time. If you go thesis route, of course, your theory class is going to be the basic skeleton of it.
Mhm.
That's going to be throughout the lit review, and they won't address it directly in the same way as the capstone does. It'll be, you know, it'll be more upfront as in kind of priming it, and then it'll flow off into everything else. Let's see here. Here. Oh, back there. Where is my mouse? That's right. They switched the sides on it. I have no idea where my mouse is.
Yeah.
Admit all. All right, we're getting more people. I like people. There. That's right. It's this direction. And there's me. I'm invisible today. Now I'm gonna move over there in just a second. Let's see. So in terms of stuff for today, I'm a little bit behind on posting out the stuff for the place to put in the next section of the paper. Let's wait a little bit on that. So we'll put those deadlines back a little bit. That's just mainly because my schedule have not been able to get as much time into your papers as I'd like to get it to where I want to ask for the next thing. So what will happen is with what you've written already, stuff you have submitted, I'll go through there, particularly the outlines for this class. But if you're in other classes, I'll be looking at them across them together. And so what I'll do is I'll look to see what kinds of backings you have in terms of sources, if you got enough, if there are, you know, any weaknesses there, anything that needs to be addressed, I'll send it to you. If there's anything helpful, I'll send it to you. And so basically, if you get any additional sources from me, which you may, I'll outline how you want to start using those in there and kind of, I'll have that in the feedback. And it's like, you just start with this point here, structure.
Dr. Hurt, can you repeat that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said about the term paper dates.
Okay, so basically what it is I'm moving back the timelines for that a little bit, just because I've not had the amount of time to compile all the basically the literature across the different subjects, so that way you can have that readily accessible. So I haven't put in I think the next item that we had up in the timeline for the paper. We'll open that up next, or it'd be not next week, but the week after. So those deadlines get shifted back a little bit. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably combine the review cycle to just one. And so you'll get my feedback. Basically what it is take advantage of the feedback, incorporate it, and some of it will be pretty easy to do. It'll just be like, click, this sentence got reworded, accept, right? And then what you'll do is you'll go through that. If there's any questions, answer those, send it back to me in that final version. You're done. You've revised it and it's gotten closer to where it needs to be. And so I've been kind of talking about that a little bit in terms of this paper. If you're in multiple classes of mine right now, what I'll be doing is I'll be looking across your papers to see how much overlap you got in those to try to help you consolidate all that information a little bit, because that's what that does. And so be patient, but that'll be coming soon, probably in the next, see if today is Wednesday, I'd say in the next 5 days, maybe 7 days before Wednesday, because I'll have some free time. The next thing we need to talk about, moving forward. So we're going to be moving into chapter 7 today, and we'll probably get through chapter 7. We might get through chapter 9, because chapter 7 is short. Chapter 8 kind of reinforces chapter 7. And then what that will do is that will set the stage where we start talking a little bit about methodology and some of the data stuff I've had you guys playing with. My camera keeps going out of focus. I wonder if it's me. Doesn't look to be. But we'll start with this right here. Here's mine over here. Share screen. Yes, this is screen 1. All right. This is chapter 7. We're just talking about preventing repeat and near repeat crime. We've talked a little bit about repeat victimization in here. I don't know if we talked so much about near repeat victimization. One of the things that's really interesting about this is where you start to see, I guess you'd say, theory, methods, and what's literally happening on the ground really come together. If I were to ask you, well, actually, go like the book kind of does, where it gives you a real life example. Then with historical.
Hey, it's so much nicer in here today than it was last time.
Yeah, they finally turned off. So preventing repeat near repeat victimization. Everyone knows about repeat victimization. One of the things you usually start out talking about, crime patterns, that kind of stuff. Usually the big overlap that people start looking at is the overlap between those who are criminals and victims, right? Because no matter what you're looking at, whether you're looking at men, women, races, anything like that, the overlap between victim and offender is very, very high, right? So there's a lot of patterns where there's overlaps. What this one is, okay, so we know that, well, we look at a specific place that's a good opportunity for crime to take place, it's going to be hit repeatedly, right? That's kind of more a little bit less crime. Hopefully none of you have ever been burglarized, but let's say if big city, you live in a bad place and you've been burglarized. How long until you're going to get burglarized again?
2 years maybe.
Maybe. Time frame is going to be a big part of it. So you got, how long are we talking about in terms of overall time frame? So yeah, here, victimization, right? What's going to happen in terms of your life? Say someone broke into your house, took everything. I mean, everything, to the point where even your refrigerator's gone.
Wow.
Like everything's gone. You walk in the house and wow, there's just nothing here. What do you do next?
You rebuild, you replace everything,
Yeah, so
and right when you get to that point, I bet you'll get burglarized right again.
yeah, so basically start talking to, it's a very good thing, right? You report it. As that happens, maybe you've got insurance, all that kind of stuff, and at some point in time, you're gonna be like, here, okay, new stuff. Wait a second. You had your stuff taken last time because it was better than somebody else's. Now your stuff's even better than it was before. Likelihood just really went up, right? And so that's part of that cycle you see with burglaries and things like that for repeat victimization. What do you mean by near repeat? Or saying near repeat, what do you think they mean?
Almost.
Yeah. Talking proximity. Right? Just close. Now, think about this as the victim side, We did the offender side, it's acquire. Right? Burglar, they want to acquire stuff. They're gonna be acquiring this stuff this whole time. Right? They're not gonna just be hitting this one house. They're gonna be hitting every house that they can see is a good target. Wherever they're at. I have now put this person over here. Right? Whereas there's this person and this person. This person's gonna be looking for more of these. You got a cycle here for getting new stuff repeatedly. Not only get your new stuff now, you'll get newer stuff later. Big read, right? Here, they give this kind of thing across a few different types of crimes and the same kind of thing. Okay, if you consider it the real life perspectives of the people involved, you'll see one thing. Each person will give you a different perspective, a different side of that kind of puzzle. When you start bringing them together and overlapping, that's where it's at, right? So it's how everything fits together. And when you start looking at how things fit together, well, here's what you see. Generally speaking, most various crime is due to repeat and near repeat victimization. Yes. So this focuses in again on England because they are the ones who are doing the most crime prevention stuff. Your baseline here, single incidents of crime. The crimes of repeat victimization, they look a little bit different here. What are you seeing there in terms of patterns? We'll stop and we'll go into minutes for a second, kind of tie that back in.
Looks like something went down in 95.
Yeah. Yeah. The interesting thing here. Yeah. One, the level, two, the pattern. This one, they have kind of a similar kind of peaks and valleys kind of thing. You get to see which one's causing the most amount of crime. And starts going on here. Here's where they really start to put together and you'll start to see some of the stuff that I've been talking about a little bit more clearly. New technologies, certainly crime stuff, I don't care. Right here. 2% of the population experiences 44% of property crime. 1%, 60. That's pretty interesting, right? When you're doing the crime concentration thing, they'll usually do the what is it, 80-20 kind of thing. There's why they use that. All right. Here, ooh, virtual repeats. That was when I was talking near repeats. Near repeats is a more common term, yeah. It starts talking, here's your high crime area. Repeat victimization, victimization in general, and then hotspots, you see how they cluster. What you really need to look at is like this. Right, you see that grid there, that overlapping, we call it Venn diagrams of those things called. That. But you have to wipe this down. Yeah. All right. So what are they talking about here? Okay. Relative size of the circles overlap and not to scale. So each of these factors is going to weigh a little bit differently whenever they're actively analyzing these things, right? Victimization, offender, hotspot, product, right? Person, could be a person, thing, place, right? You start overlapping these things, you start getting something that's a bit different. As you look here, what they're trying to do is they're trying to figure out the overlaps here. If you want to find out stuff like that. It's like, no eraser, I keep looking for an eraser. I'm gonna go grab a paper. Wipe this down. So as you're doing this and you're trying to pull out that kind of information, there are multiple ways to do that for multiple. Each of those different areas, if you look at it in terms of place, offenders, victims, targeted items, you can focus on any one of those areas, but it's all about how they come together. For example, one way to do this would be to, I want to talk about that yet or no? I think I do. You may remember in here, in class work too, where I had you guys play with these things a little bit.
I actually didn't get around to doing that, but I saw where you posted it.
We played with the first one, which is just
Yeah.
the OSBI data, the arrest data, right? That's one, right? What is this supply? 5-year estimates. All counties in Oklahoma, age and sex, right? Each of these counties, it'll give you all this information, total population, their ages, ratios between the sex and age. Some of them also have things like race, ethnicity, income, all of those things, right? Same process you have for overlapping and to figure out what's going on is the same process you'll use over here. Same one you've been doing, right? And so what you do is you start overlapping. For this, it'd be like, these are control measures. For this other one, maybe that's a control measure where you start looking at arrests, that kind of stuff. Maybe it's not. Maybe that's your dependent thing, the thing that you're interested in. What's causing these arrest rates to change in these areas, right? And then how you actually go about it, right? First thing I want to show you, this will help me. Enable editing. Okay, 2 skills if you're ever going to play with data. This is information you will want to have at some point because you'll do this already. Okay, you guys know concatenate, right? Okay, now we'll start there. Let's say I've got, where's that other down set? Still right here. We'll take these first. Well, okay. So let's say if there was something else in here that I wanted to add it together, like let's say I had a good example. It comes up a lot. Usually where it comes up is with names, things like that, where I've got to combine, like I'm tracking people, first name, last name. Sometimes I want it in 1 cell, sometimes I want it in 2. That's where this would come in, right? What this can let you do is if you go into formulas, text, concat right here, pops up this thing. I can tell it, okay, right here, I want this text data. This one, I want the next one, right? And depending on how I have it formatted, if I just tell it okay, it combines the 2 for me automatically. And you can add in spaces and format it however you want, and it will do that automatically. The one that's going to be of even more use for you. And you copy something right here under your options, right here, transpose. Okay, it popped everything out that way because of the way it was moved over. I like that it did that.
Oh,
And so we'll do this again. It should pop everything over at once. Yeah, like that, right? So you can move an entire set of information over at once. If you can do that, then moving something like this around isn't that hard because I can just grab all of this data and say, I want to move this over here and I want to put it here. But instead of that, I'll put it there. Right? And so that way, now you got it in a way that's analyzed. You want your variables on the top, whatever it is you're analyzing, down like that. When you do that, you end up with, let's see, it's not that. Something like that. Every county, total population, the number of males, number of females, all of that across all of it. Right? You start digging into these things, what you're gonna find immediately off the bat is people. Right? It's not until you start getting much, much further and you actually pull out the relationships, because what you're looking at, it's not any one of these things. It's those spaces between. Right? Someone's a little simple, like what we do is a little simple subtraction. Right? I've got 2 points. What's the difference? That's that space between. Some of those are a little bit harder to start looking for relationships. And so if you want to get into that after we develop the paper the rest of the way, let me know, because basically we've already set some of that up from an easy standpoint to where, okay, you got something like this for these 2 years. Pull that back up. Yeah, I don't know. All I need to add in for this is just a couple more bits of information. You've got a baseline for any type of map, any type of county level analysis. You got control measures already there. Maybe you've got other measures there too, right? And that's the stuff that's available. What you do with it from there, dealing with this, you pick a direction you want to take it, and whether you want to dive down or go up. If you dive down, you're going into more specifics. That's usually where you want to go first, because you want to take it up to the top. That's a grounded theory. But that's theory. It's enough about that. This is more about seeing why they do it like that. It's about those differences. The more things you overlap, the closer you get to that target, that actual problem. That's how it works like that. They'll take that same process and they'll apply it across a few different veins in the next couple of chapters, which is why I kind of presented it that way. So here, explaining crime concentrations. Yeah. Some things flag crime, some things boost crime. There's interaction effects, all of that. How this works. Issues. That's of less importance. You're seeing pattern. Here's where it gets into the actual theory side of it. They start moving back into deterrence again, which is interesting, but they go beyond it a little bit more. Okay. Deterrence, you know what that is. Okay. Practical problem. Punishment. Does it work? Okay. We've already talked about theory in here. You guys, for these, they tend to focus on the rational choice stuff. This, you can focus in on is, I think it's in this chapter where they mention, because here's where it gets that really good stuff to read. No, maybe it's in the last one.
Are we on chapter 8 or 9 now?
7 and 8. So 7 splits up the repeat and near repeat victimization. 8 is where they actually start telling you about the math that's underlying it. Right? Here. Burrito's law. That's the 80-20 rule. Okay. Here's where it works, right? Vendors, products, victims, that kind of thing. If you had methods, great. If not, this might be new, and I'll kind of preface a little bit. There are 2 big curves that we kind of look for in our field. Lines. One's a straight line, whether it's positive, negative, or no relationship kind of thing. The other ones are like that. They're growth curves, right? This one's pretty simple. You'll start pulling these out as you start looking at the overlaps between these things. This one gets a little bit more difficult because what you'll see as I start to measure this, okay? That 80-20 rule. 20% of people make 80% of the crimes. 20% of places hold 80% of the crimes, right? What is it, if you look at that distribution, it's this one. There's probably someone who wants. Don't know who it is. You're familiar with that, one, right? That's what that is. This thing right here. Take a little bit further, you get one of those. Right, you got a curve there, curve there, curve there, curve there. That's the normal distribution. You're building it off of logarithmic growth. Different curves. If we know that this and this and this and this each has this, then there are different relationships that pull out because it changes. The 80-20 rule is a rule for production. It's economics. You'll see there's two of them. They're the same thing, basically, though. One's Pareto. The other is the referred to as the Matthew principle. That one's biblical. 25-29. Basically what it says is to those that have, more is given, that those that don't, more is taken. It's the same thing, right? Pareto was work productivity. It was it wasn't this, it was the square root of the number of employees you have as ones that actually do half of the work kind of thing. Right?
Probably true.
You all have that experience. All of this stuff comes from that at one level. One level's us in the moment, and then you have the extreme abstractive theory every level in between. Right? And do we want to dive in from what we know, which is very surface level, and see how deep it goes, or do we want to look up? These are the ones that kind of take you up because they govern all of it. I want you guys to dial in. And just find something that interests you. When you do, we'll take it and do something. Here, that's what they're talking about. So you're trying to pull out that relationship across all these things. So the first one you see is a very high relationship with people. Right? People are the ones that are causing crime, people are the ones who are victims of crimes. People have things and are in places. People. Once you start adding in either more information, more variables, more time, or maybe more people, you start to pull out more information from it, right? What is it specifically that leads to this type of crime, that kind of thing? What causes it? That's kind of the math behind it in terms of very, very, very straightforward and not the here's what a distribution is. So that'll get that across. From there, they'll talk about the 80-20 rule. We'll talk about speeding. The next thing they do is they start talking about that and how it affects this. And then if you're dealing with the issues with, let me go grab something because I keep looking for something like this. I'll be right back.
You do anything.
Going to Chicago with him. Yeah.
We definitely should.
Prisoning.
Mm,
Kind of scared. I
how
was like,
scary.
so scared. Oh my, and they want me to chair the panel. I'm like,
Hands down. Sorry about that. Pet peeve of mine.
yeah.
Can't handle that. Apparently my tolerance for getting ink all over my hands is very limited. But yeah, that's one of those things that the importance of those relationships is not to be understated. Whether you're dealing with straight lines, logarithmic growth, you start adding it across multiple things, you get to geometric. Give you an idea of its importance of just this right here. How important that is We're squaring a square here, because that constant is the speed of light. Anytime you have an acceleration, acceleration itself is one of those. The faster you go, the more energy it takes for you to add more speed. It's literally the thing that forms reality. Fucking crazy. But aside from that, some the 80-20 rule here is where they start framing it in terms of, they talk about focus deterrence, but really it's this right here. There's a very specific number of people who do the most damage. Depending on how we want to go about it, it's like we can address that quite directly. It's just the number of people and the efforts that it would take are sometimes a bit more difficult. Here they start talking about collective dynamics and that kind of thing. Who's leading what, when, and where? Who has what effects when and where? Right? Every criminal activity involves a group. Gang activities are an example of that. Behavior is not reducible to the aggregate and individual dispositions and decisions. What are they saying there? Whenever you start dealing with groups, whether you deal with offenders or any of these things, you're dealing with something more than just those people there. That dynamic is its own animal. Right? Which is why sometimes repeated incapacitation of individual violent offenders will not have that same impact. Right? What are they talking about there? They're talking about the legal or the logical reasons why you do things like interdiction, that kind of stuff. You can no longer hang out with these certain people. Right? Different ways to go about it. Create certain swiftness. Here's where they actually get into some really cool stuff. Where instead of outlining it like the normal criminal justice system, they start identifying ways to, mobilize informal social controls. Right? Because they talk about here, it's like to some degree this will do stuff, but the system itself is slow. Okay. Most outreach and support, legitimacy. Yeah, that's enough about that. The big thing is that aspect of that process, because basically that process is what will get you the rest of the information. Conclusion, folks, that forcing the plant is where I move to the next one. We're actually getting to the actual resistance. Okay. With this one, they start to cue back into that time element. Right? Many people offend once, some do much others, right? Smaller sets of person with high frequency over longer periods of times, that's a good target if you want to have effective crime prevention. So, that line, talking to assistance new, go back all the way to philosophy. And from there, we move into what desistance actually is. Okay. First thing, of all things, what is it we actually mean by this term? When we say term desistance, what are we talking about?
Desistance, stop,
Yeah, no longer committing crime.
cease and desist.
Stop, desist. We'll put it, instead it's not equal to, we'll say it's the exact opposite of what?
Exist.
No. Right?
Oh, okay.
Right. One sailor is talking about desistance, the other side you're talking about recidivism, right? So there's two bodies of literature you can tie into. In terms of both of these things, you probably had a little bit more exposure to recidivism than desistance kind of stuff. It's one for basically the analog to that. What's the biggest question that you ask for anytime you deal with anybody who's studying recidivism?
How many? How often?
Getting closer.
Which crimes?
Time.
Oh.
Well, that to some degree will dictate all the rest too. It really will, because it'll be, at first, it's that time element. Because we know for certain, the longer it is, the more likely. Then you go into crime types. Good. That's what they're getting across here. Okay. And they define it, often characterized by absence of offending, continued maintenance of that absence. Okay. Conceptually distinct from offending and terminating it, which is you no longer commit illegal acts. So, has it stopped or has it desisted? What are they asking there?
Okay, so stop would be completely like, you're not committing crimes anymore. I guess desist would also mean that you're not involved with the system anymore. Because if it's the exact opposite of recidivism, recidivism involves being back in the system, you're getting caught for things.
So desist that you're not getting caught. Maybe. Crime. Type. Okay, with crime type, time. That's the other one I'm looking for. In line with this one to some degree. Frequency. Right? Ooh, medical stuff. I don't know if I've ever made that analogy. It's a lot like medicine in some ways, okay? What type of drug are you taking, you giving? How often are you giving it to them? You know, to some degree, this one's also gonna have the how strong is it kind of thing, you know, how intense. You get that on the method side too, over how long. Same kind of understanding, right? So we deal with that. If they didn't get caught, that would be one type. We're dealing with frequency and crime types. So over time, would be nothing over time. Yes, they have desisted, that'd be stopping too. Crime types. Positive, no, negative. Positive. Worse. Worse crime. One less severe. That also fall under here. Lower the threshold to some degree, right? Committing less severe crimes. Less free. Yeah. There we go. Can't tell. There we go. I can't tell if you got sound. Give it just a second. Yeah. All right. So here, we're talking about a number of things. Right now, we're moving into desistance. We're also kind of talking about recidivism because you're essentially talking close parallel on the opposite end of the spectrum. Making a distinction between what someone just stops committing crime versus desistance. Desistance is a broader term. It'll capture both those who no longer commit crime, but also any decrease, any movement in a better direction where the problems that are being presented decrease, whether that's crime types, frequency, all that kind of stuff. Main thing you want to do anytime you look into it though is right here where it says the definitions, conceptualization, and operationalization. Right? That's straight from your methods. Okay. Here's where they get into the next aspect of it. they made a good analogy here, I'm trying to remember what it was. In practice, it may be true that you know it when you see it with respect to desistance. Okay, so they're getting there is you'd almost say it's to some degree qualitative. That they're talking about the quality of things, that you can see it by looking at it. They use a quote that's from in the legal system. There's actually a couple of good quotes that kind of get it across. The one they use is about that dog. And it's like, if you're talking about the difference between being stumbled over and kicked, people can tell the difference, right? The actions themselves and the patterns around them, where people used to make those inferences to tell that. Here, they're getting to the spirit, what it actually means to trying to do, kind of thing. What was that? Zigzag pattern on and off again is usually what you see. It's on and off. Other people change. So what they're doing there is they're tying into people and the self and the individual changes they make versus the aggregate. Right? At the aggregate, you pull out these patterns. It seems very, very deterministic. It's not how people work them. Here, we're identifying that there. Patterns aren't quite easy to pick out. They're different and depend on what you're looking for at different stages. Right here, they actually start talking about secondary desistance. When the real change of forms and the offender transforms their identity, meaning it's not just that they've no longer been involved in crime. That change that they've made has become a part of who they are. It's like, and how do we capture that? If you're thinking of it in terms of research stuff, capturing that kind of stuff is really, really difficult, but it's very, very important because what are we trying to do? We're trying to stop crime. Some of those things you can't do from this side. Some of it's going to be on that side, right? And so you have to keep both of those into account. There's some desistance stage like crosses. We're going to talk about that. It's kind of prime area of the 1980s. Yes. Okay. Anything I want to tell you about that? What do we know? Timing. Are you guys sensing a theme? Time keeps coming up, doesn't it? Okay. Time is a very powerful thing. Okay, quantitative and qualitative approaches. That's the reason why they're talking about that is because they're highlighting. You need both. You miss one, you miss both. I don't know if I want that. That's a methodology thing. I won't talk about. Okay. Correlates of desistance. Several correlates have been found. Relationships, occupations, parenthood, delinquent peers, that kind of thing. The meaning. Well, it's subjective. Lessons from research on trajectories of offending. Basically what they're saying here is depending on what side you focus on, whether you're talking about the events themselves, the locations, or the people, remember what you're dealing with. That one right there, those lessons are important. Identified literature being 4 trajectories. Here's where I start to identify those. Life course, persistent, adolescent, limited. We don't need to go back into theory though. Theories of desistance. Again, they go back into that. It's going to be the same kind of stuff we've been writing to already, where it's here are the different topics that matter for it. Biology, that's going to be straightforward. Psychology, yes. Social processes. At each stage, those are all different veins through which you can study these types of topics for desistance itself. Each one of those things, you'll notice that's kind of a recurrent theme throughout each of these chapters. Those are different ways, different aspects, different theories. I don't want to say it's not paradigms, it's not. There's another word for it. Groupings of theories where they're all related. Okay. From there, applying it, well, depends on which aspect you're focusing on. Some of them are harder than others. And so I really want to get into that for that before I move on. Hang on one third. I think that'll do it for that. Because otherwise it's just going back into the biology stuff that we've already talked about. For that, we'll go into methods. We'll start that because what they do here in this next section, here they're talking about approaches. Basically, you're talking about okay, what facet of it you're focusing in on, and also tying it in some to theory. Down here's the methods. You're going to target products, the environment, crime itself, the procedures, that kind of stuff. Those are all different ways you can target it. Way I would have you start, that'd be the part you should like. Because it starts out at surface level, right? It's quite literally surface level. When you start out with this stuff, what you do is you start with available information, which is a lot of, there's a lot of information out there. Your basic control measures you'll have at multiple levels, right? So from there, you start with the baseline. Okay, your control measures, they're going to be pretty uniform across no matter what theories you go with. The theories themselves, if you've had theory, great. If you haven't, don't worry about it, right? If you have theory, what you would want to look at is how that theory puts those concepts in what order and relationships, because they'll change for different theories. I can stop this right now. Because this will help you tie it all together. Once you have those concepts, what you need to do is in the literature, this would be a methods class. So if you want to run these topics or pick a different one for methods class, or for that methods class, you can do it. It's like, what you do is you start looking at the literature and see what they actually pulled in to create those measures. Because very rarely do you find stuff that's everything in this analysis was something that's already together. Like socioeconomic status is like the easiest one to identify. What is socioeconomic status? Education, income, occupation, stuff like that. It's under quality of life.
Housing.
Yeah, and so what do you look at? You can take, okay, maybe we're going to take types of housing, income, and education, and we're going to create a scale from it where we add them together in some particular way. So that way you can identify people in different categories. When you do that, you turn on, okay, what's the relationship between these things now? I'm starting to identify those spaces, those relationships. That's what the math does. And so by doing that, very quickly you see, okay, this thing that we put together, does it have a relationship with this after we take out all of those other relationships, the population or the racial or the income or the whatever it is you're wanting to deal with. You pull out the ones that's gonna, we already know that there are problems there because those problems are gonna stack. And so that's why it's set up like that. That's why I started out to show you guys how to run some of this stuff and play with these numbers a little bit. You have them right here available, right? Any of this stuff, I can show you where to get it. Some of it's easier to use than others. The ASC stuff or ACS stuff is pretty easy. That's why I like it. But basically you just start there and just start, okay, this is what it is. Here's what is available, right? Here's what they've already been doing, because most of that research is already out there using the same type of sources, just different places. And then when you start stacking those things together, that Venn diagram, that's where you pull it out, whether you're doing it on the math side and you can't see it, or whether you do it on the spatial side and you literally see it. If you do both together, what do you get? More accuracy, right? Then I said, going up or down, what I mean is, okay, counties, you can go from counties to other levels of measure. We've got block groups, census tracts, block groups, municipalities, people, right? All those are below. From there, you can grab all that information, move it up into the theory, you start pulling those things out. That 80-20 rule, that crime concentration, that's somebody who's been reading economics. That rule has been around, the Pareto principle has been around for, was it 200-400 years, something like that? All they did was look over there. Curse over here too. Yeah, curse applies to lots of things. They start pulling out those relationships where they apply. As they do that, now you know something can apply across things. Cool. Big thought? Little thought? Was that a big thought or a little thought? I don't know, I'm asking you guys. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, that's all I have time to prepare for.
Oh, for real?
For real, I was over numbers all last night. I
Oh.
stopped at 7 this morning.
Oh.
And still have another presentation I'm doing next week.
No, because I talked to Dr. Fitzgerald today and he wants to push the whole thing on you, so just heads up.
Does he?
He does.
I was playing with him a little bit about that because originally he wasn't going, so I figured it'd be mine.
That's what he said. He was like, no,
Yeah.
it's supposed to be me, James and somebody else, I
Yeah.
can't remember, and it was, they're the ones that did
Yeah, it's
it.
supposed to
I
be-
didn't even know what was
Yeah.
going
That's
on.
supposed to be me and the guy from the other institution.
Yeah.
The other guy, he I forget what happened at his work. It's like, I have to cancel it now because I got this other conflict. And it's like, this is just me. And then
Yeah.
Brett decided he was going to Dr. Fitzgerald, and I was like, oh. But yeah, no, it'll be a good one. I've actually run the numbers on that. There's one more thing. Yeah. That's one. I'll talk about that. So where it fits and why. Normally I don't give you guys, like, I'll tell you for the method stuff next semester, if you want an easy project, I got that. Right? Usually I kind of let people kind of, okay, what does it really interest you? Because if I can get you guys in what interests you, it's fully yours and you'll take off with it. Because I've seen that a lot in other universities where it's like, okay, you're gonna do this project for me because I want this project. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. What we've been doing though is something that Fitz actually started. 40 years worth of arrest and drug data. And so we've got, how many years of it? Where I can start moving it over pretty quickly. And so if you want to start looking at annual stuff, that one's really easy. Annual is just 1 year. We can take that same set of information. You can go across 3 years, now you can look at 20 years. You can look across the entire data set. If you want to take 5 years at a time, your numbers increase, right? Now you see a different picture, a bigger one, right? Sometimes we need to see big picture, sometimes we need to see the very, very small picture. And so it's just, what do you want to look at? What kinds of methods do you want to learn? What kinds of skills? That kind of thing. Like that stuff, the Excel stuff, transposing and concatenating. I don't teach you that. You have to figure that out, right? You learn how to do that. I can take an entire spreadsheet and move it in a split second rather than going cell by cell, right? Those are the skills you want because no matter where you go, at some point you're going to interact with the cell. At some point you're going to handle information and data. You're going to want to know how to sort it, how to control it, and how to move it, and how to use it. It's this. Whether you're trying to prevent crime, this class where it's all going to be about that routine activities theory, the crime events itself, and how you affect it. Because there's different ways to do it, or whether it's I've got a job to do. No one's giving me the information. I've got to figure out where to get the information, figure out what kind of things I need. Right? You're literally left in the dark. You got to figure a way out. Build a ladder. Right? And so this right here is what I need to work on next. Probably won't get to it today. It's this part right down here. All those times are off because I have not put up a thing for theory. I don't think. I think I stopped with, what was it? That's not it. Yeah. I just had that first. So I need to get the rest of those out there. Assignment 2 and assignment 3. And what we'll do is we'll just, instead of doing each one where you do it revised, once you get it back, revise all together, submit it all at once. They'll be fine either way because what you'll get in terms of me, you guys have seen feedback from me before and stuff, right? Yeah, you get a lot of feedback, right? Like that?
Mark it up,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so we'll do that. By the time that's done, that'll take me, next week, you'll be able to write. 2 weeks, that'll take me another week. Yeah, that'll get us, we'll still have a couple weeks too, if you want to keep refining it, bounce it back and forth a couple times. But that's the major goal in here is to see you guys actually delving into it and doing it. Because I want to see you guys playing with numbers by the time that we get, the next 6 months. Doesn't need to be just an idea. I need to see it, right? It's the same difference between, what I said there in terms of, if you've been stumbled over or kicked, right? It's the same thing. Another one would be, what was it? It was a legal one related to inappropriate images. You know if it's art and you know if it isn't, right? In this one, I kind of skipped over. There's a section where they talk about this as an art and this as a science. It's both. It's both all the time. And so you got to learn how to kind of navigate both of those things and play with it. Because only after you start playing with it, you actually get to see how it moves. And when I say how it moves, I mean that quite literally. If you don't mind, I can show them some stuff. So I'll
Yeah,
show you
go for
quite
it.
literally what it means, if you can see it.
Y'all
Here.
tell me your honest feelings, because if you don't hurt my feelings, they will. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's like here, so we did one with opioids and fentanyl. Actually, that'd be 2, 4, however many, you could cut it a whole bunch of different ways, right? So you literally look at it in terms of the shape it takes on the map, but if you start delving into it, like, I'm gonna scroll all the way down the end because that's where I got the map stuff. So here you can see, that's what fentanyl looked like in 2019, 2020, 2021. Each one of those is different, right? If you look at the things that are consistent, there's really only 4 places, that's where the people are, right? Same kind of thing down here with a different drug type. When you start playing with the numbers, what you'll see is, what we did is we took the number of deaths for each county, its crime index rate, its population, the percent of people, males in the county, percent of the people were under 18, percent that were minorities, percent that were Hispanics, and look to see what those relationships were, right? Descriptive statistics right here. Okay. Got that one in there twice. I need to look at that, see what it's like. I know what it is 3 times. So one's for 2019, 2020, and then the change. I literally just subtracted, right? When you look
So
at the
the
next,
crime changed, but the population didn't change very much at all,
very
like
small changes in
negligibly.
projections for some of them, well, in terms of counties themselves, like it might be literally 1 person, it might be 20,000, right? And that's that people thing. And so if you start looking at it at the very initial level, like that's easy to be for 2019, 2020. The only thing that's really significant here for fentanyl, crime index and population, they're over 80%. If you're over 80%, you're measuring the same thing. If you get a 1-to-1 ratio, it is the same thing. That's over 90%. It's the same thing. It's people.
And if
Okay.
you look at your minorities, what happened there?
Yeah.
What happened there?
So here, it's the relationship. So it's like,
See,
so for a,
That's crazy.
basically you'd say is that's a weak relationship, but it's not even statistically significant.
not even
Yeah,
close.
not even statistic. When you start getting down here to the change, what you start seeing is, okay, now things start to change. Once I looked at the difference there, crime index still mattered. That population didn't, and some of these others didn't. But when you start looking at the relationships between them, those start popping up a lot more than what they were before. And then so what ends up happening is you increase that time frame, the strength of those relationships between the actual fentanyl deaths and all those other things get stronger. So we need to increase in time frame. That's gonna be one of the things we look at. Or we can increase in resolution, as in, now we're no longer dealing with counties, let's deal with street segments, like actual city blocks, right? Now, instead of it being 77 counties that we're analyzing, it's however many million of city blocks there are across whatever the space that we're in, right? It can be several thousand, like you're just dealing with one big city. You can do larger if you want to. How far, how specific, how close, how fine of resolution do you want, or how wide? Because you can look at it that way too, and then start playing. Because as you play with those different elements of it, you'll see different relationships pop up. Sometimes it'll be a little bit just associated with statistics. So there's a little bit care you have to have with that on the math side when we're methods of doing it. But most of it's just explore, see what you find, because you might find something like what they found. Just 10 years ago was whenever the crime concentration stuff came out. They literally, what they were doing is they were just looking at it with crime we're gonna look at it from a perspective of people, from the perspective of the events itself and where they take place. Look at people in the places, they follow that same curve. That's that same curve that we see over in economics that they found like a couple hundred years ago. Maybe it's 400 years ago. I think it's 400. I want to say it was 1600s.
A long time.
Yeah, and so it's like, oh, so you just go back and you pull that information from the past and you bring it forward. Now you've affected something that's even bigger, right? Because it's a big thing. Stuff we already should have known. In my area, it's fear of crime. Did I talk to you guys about fear in here yet? I know there's a section where we'll talk about fear. I'll tell you a little bit about it. The biggest revelation I had is not one associated with anything that I actually did. It was whenever I was reading. I read a lot of weird stuff. Whenever I have time, I don't have time to anymore. But for that one was over 80 years of research in the fear of crime. They've kind of settled to some degree. There is a cognitive element. I think I talked about it here. When you go out to that parking lot, you feel afraid. Like, if I'm thinking about it, do I feel afraid? Actually do it, the emotional. And then you have the effects of those in what you do, right? If I were to go back and say Alexander the Great, right? There are literally accounts of him making sacrifices on the hills before a battlefield, trying to instill fear in his enemy. When he was doing it, he's praying to the god Phobos, the god of fear, a twin god, Phobos and Deimos, phobia and dread. Phobos, emotional, right there in the moment, fear, dread, as in the cognitive. 4,000 years ago, that's how they conceptualize that. It's no different. That aspect of humanity has not changed at all in 100,000 years. We get afraid of things, right? You can literally go back and look at their pantheon of gods and the relationships between them, and you find their correlates right here. That's the cool shit when you're playing with ideas, right? There's all kinds of stuff like that. So there is no limit to what direction you can take this. It's just the real limit is what do we have available and how can we use it? And so those papers, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be looking at, okay, here's the information you found. Here's where you're kind of thinking. How can we turn this something you can use? Cool. Oh, I didn't show you guys online. I didn't have this shared, did I? Or did I? I can't tell. I can never tell with this thing. I'll show you guys online since you guys didn't see it right here. So this is one set of analyses we've done. There's my mouse again. Over here. And so if you look
I
at,
can't see it.
well, it's sharing this screen over here, I think. Let me stop it because I have no idea. I hate this thing.
I can see it.
Oh, okay. It just looked weird.
It always does. My favorite is when the sound doesn't come through because then I don't know if anybody does anything like that. It's like, ah. Okay. So you can see here, what we did was just, we took a couple of the different drugs that OBN tracks, Bureau of Narcotics, and mapped them. And you can see they take different shapes, right? So that's literally the shapes that they take. If you start looking at it in terms of, okay, so they're in these counties here, these numbers. We start analyzing that from a statistics standpoint. You can start getting information about, okay, the mean number of deaths in 2019 for fentanyl was less than 1. Right? But they went all the way up to 18 in that 1 year. One county had 18. The next county, the highest county, had 45. Right? And so you start seeing what you're really looking at is the differences between each of these counties and those numbers. Right? So you're looking at those differences. If you add in an extra step where you subtract out, you're looking at those differences between differences. And so what you start seeing is you're literally delving into, to some degree, it's sort of like abstraction. There's the thing that here it is as it is. And if I take a different perspective, I see something a little bit differently. That's literally what you're doing. You're just look at it from over here. Look at it from over here. It's a triangulation. It's also why I tend to do things in threes. I'll start out 3 years or 3 times. Look at it 3 different ways. 2 ends, and they kind of come towards the middle. Or 2 outsides, so I got no idea what the hell I'm doing. Right? Just, I think here's where the ends are in this thing. We'll start there and try to figure out where those connections are. Cool? Different way of looking at it, but it's still the same things that you guys are already doing. It's just applying it at different levels. Cool? Is that good for a class period today? All right. What are we working on here? Outlines are in my hands, yes? Okay. Next you need from me are, I need to get you guys articles, and what I'll do is I'll look at that. If I'm not seeing articles already, I will. If you've been sending me emails, hopefully I've answered all of them. I think I've answered all the emails where people are asking me stuff. If you haven't, if you've sent me an email and I haven't gotten back to you, send it to me because I'm watching that like a hawk right now because I actually have some time. It's really nice. And so I'm going to be getting some things done pretty fast. So get that to me if I haven't gotten to you, and then so what I'll be doing is I'll look at those outlines. I'll send you some supplemental information if you need it, if everything's squared away. Yeah, run with it. And then in the meantime, I'll be looking at that animal, and then how we can turn it to you. Because there's all kinds of ways we can do it. And then get the skill set. We're actually playing with the data because it's its own data, like its own skill set. It's really nice to have, very useful.
I have some questions about the paper.
Yeah, go right ahead.
So currently, I know that we were like sending you what we were like
Mhm.
going to focus on. And
Yes.
so now are we doing like whatever you send us? Like, are we now doing an outline of that
No, no.
and
You're
sending
fine.
it to you?
Yeah, no. So what do you have right now so far? What I'm gonna do, if you're in multiple classes, what I'll do is I'll look at all of those submissions and I'll tie them together for you. So it's like, okay, you've got this paper on here, you've got a few different subjects. One of those will actually, you can take that same section and move it over here. And here's another couple articles to supplement, right? And that'll tie it in. That kind of stuff. Maybe it'll be theory if you've not gotten anything from me already. It's like, okay, here's the theory you really want to use for this, and here's how that will work. And then don't worry about the actual analysis side of it unless you want to. If your methods next semester, you'll get it. If you take it with me, if you just want to do it or you want to get started on it, or you sounds like something you're interested in, send me an email. We'll get started. Right? Whenever that's if it's not bound to a class, there's no specific time frame for it. So we'll work at your time frame to the best of my abilities. Right? Cool.
Okay, and so by next week, what is our like by next week or by next class or the next two classes, what is our goal as far as like where to be on the paper? Just so I can make sure I'm like up to speed.
I would expect that within 2 weeks of coming back to class, so I'd say, well, class, not next week, the week after, I'd say by the end of that week, beginning of next, look to have an initial draft of a lit review by about that time. Aim for 10 pages if you can, 5's fine. I don't really care about the page, it's the content. Because what will happen is you'll find that some of those articles will have a lot more information you can use than some others. And so I don't want you to spend a whole lot of time trying to figure that out. I want you to start seeing how it works, and then I'll start supplying the rest. So in time, you'll see, this is the difference between this article and that. This is how I can identify what works for me quickly, because that speed element is going to be what you need next. Cool? Okay. All right. Everybody happy?
Yes.
Cool. All right. We'll pick up their next class. We don't meet next week. I'd say probably within the next, I'd say 5 to 7 days max. It might be 2 to 3, depending on how smooth tomorrow goes. That's a different thing. But if that goes smooth, I should be able to get some stuff out there. Really. But with that, if you have any questions, you need anything, let me know, and we'll pick up next time with papers and methods stuff, as in not methodology, but as in applied methods. Cool. All right. Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I'm gonna let you guys out of here a little bit early and extra time. I'm actually start on some of that right now. So I will see you all next time. All righty. All right. See you